Hi, I'm Michelle Walters. So happy to be here today for this very, very special retreat. I am a hypnotherapist. I practice in the East Bay of California, and I see people both in my private office as well as people online. Dr. Amba invited me here today because this retreat is largely about manifesting. And I wrote a book about manifesting called An Alignment of Spirit Finding Work You Love. And what I thought I would talk about today are the four concepts that are sort of behind my book, because I know many of the people here at this event might be interested in knowing what is in a book about manifesting. Why did I write it? Who am I? What is this all about, really? So, I am a number of things. I'm a hypnotherapist, I'm a leadership coach. Clearly, I'm an author, I'm a mom, and I spent over 20 years working in digital marketing, like on the corporate agency side of things, not really where you think about law of attraction, right? But the thing for me was that because of that kind of work, those assignments would come and go and come and go. And so, what did I need to get good at manifesting? A job. And lots of people need help figuring out how to manifest something. And my experience really just came from finding a job. So, in the process of all of this, I realized that, wow, I could take kind of all these different pieces of positive thinking and studies and science and put them all together in such a way as to help people understand just what manifesting can be about. So, in my book, I talk about four steps to manifesting, and that's what I want to talk about with everyone today. So, I'm going to share now the link to my book and put that in the chat because I think it's very likely that many of you may want to pick up a copy of this after you've seen my chat today. The first step in manifesting is releasing. And I'm sure that feels very common, very like, yeah, 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 to everybody here. But why is releasing so important? Well, I think releasing is so important because if you don't release, you're not making any space for the next thing to show up. And a lot of people think, oh, yeah, well, I went on a walk. That was my release. Well, that might not be good enough. You might need to do a little bit more if you're really trying to get over the hump of something. So one of the examples I talk about in my book was a time when I'd lost my job. My husband had actually died a couple of years before, and his energy was all over the house. We'd spend a lot of time painting together, doing house projects together, and then he was deceased and I'd had a job and my job ended and I was like, I got to move on. But I realized that like my husband's energy was all over the house. So what did I do? I released it. I painted 60% of my house. Not everybody needs to paint 60% of their house in order to move some energy out. Maybe you can just change the tablecloths or put up new window curtains. But find a way, if you're trying to release, to figure out sort of where you have some stuck energy that really needs to get moved. And what can you do to move it? It's just so important to do that releasing step. Now, you can actually do this manifesting thing starting at any step, but I find it's always easier to start with release. And one of the things that I encourage people to do to have a little practice with releasing, and you could do this at home on your own. You could push pause and then take a moment. But I like to dance because dancing is a great way to release. Or if you're not going to dance, at minimum, take a big stretch because a stretch is a great way to have a release. Now, that might not be good enough if you're trying to manifest something really big, but there's really no harm in stretching anytime you feel the need to do so. The second step in manifesting is to create. And creating is my favorite part of the whole thing. When you create, you get to imagine what it is you want. You get to imagine it, you get to dream it, you get to think about whatever it is you want it to be, and you get to make it however you want. So, what can you do to create? Well, you can doodle, you can journal as if it's the future. So, it's 2025, and here's what I already have. When you put your energy into believing that something just is, That's part of what makes it come to be. One of the examples that I talk about was that I really wanted to figure out how to create a job overseas. I mean, little old me, how was I going to get a job overseas? I didn't know how to get a job overseas. Well, I was working at a consulting company, and then I realized maybe I should just start talking to people about it. So I started telling people, the partners of the company, something comes up, I'd really like to go overseas. So lo and behold, something came up like 2 weeks later, and they sent me to New Zealand, and I got to work in New Zealand for 6 weeks. And then because I did a good job in New Zealand, when the head of the London office had to go out on maternity leave, who did they call? They called me. I got to go to London and run the office for a while. Why was this coming to be? Because I created it, because I imagined it, because I also took action on it. You can't just sit there and create and think that the whole thing is going to happen for you if you're not actually willing to like open your mouth or do something. You're going to have to be bold enough to actually say something if you want to make that creation happen. So, releasing, creating, those are the first two steps in manifesting. When I do this workshop with a lot of people, I will have them take a little pause. So if you want to take a pause and push the pause button here, this is a great time to get out a piece of paper and a pencil and draw a picture. Draw a picture of whatever it is you're trying to manifest. Draw a picture of that new house, that new job, that new boyfriend, that whatever it is that you're trying to get to be. And then as you see that picture, you hang it on your wall, right? This is like the whole concept of vision boards because your subconscious mind, and I know something about this because remember, I'm a hypnotherapist, your subconscious mind gets that picture and it weaves in. And as it goes into your mind, you become better and better at sort of seeing those opportunities, remembering to say something, telling somebody this and this. And that's a huge part of the energy that brings things to be your way. The third step in manifesting is thanking. And this can seem really weird because what I encourage people to do is to be thankful for things that haven't even happened yet. And it will sound really, really strange. But if you start saying, thank you for this, you are putting yourself into that energy of believing that it is so much going to happen that there's just no other reality that that thank you is going to happen. One of the quotes I love about this is, if you count all of your assets, you will always show a profit. And I think that's just a beautiful way of thinking about this. So my example for this one is a little bit weird. I I was in love with this gentleman. He later became my husband. His name was Bruce. Great guy. Well, Bruce was really sick, and he desperately needed a lung transplant. If he got this lung transplant, he would live. We could be married. Lots of good things could happen. Without the lung transplant, not so good, really. So I started just saying thank you for Bruce's transplant. Thank you, universe. Bruce's transplant, it came out great. Thank you for the transplant. And, I mean, I wasn't like saying this to all my friends, but this was like what ran through my head all the time. Just there was absolutely complete faith that this was going to happen. Such complete faith that I was willing to be thanking the universe for this, thanking God for something that hadn't happened yet. And if you can get yourself into the place of being thankful for this thing that's going to happen, you are going steps and steps, leaps further, really, in terms of manifesting whatever it is you're trying to bring into your life. So at this point, I usually push the pause button and I have people go around and recognize what allowed them to be here, what brought them to this material, who did they talk to, what did they see, how did they manage to find the time. It's a great way of just remembering to be thankful for whatever you've got because you could have it worse. Always true. The last step in manifesting is receiving. And receiving is really important because there are some people who are actually really bad receivers. I was talking to a friend recently, it's a few days after Mother's Day, and she was saying that her sister had brought her mother flowers on Mother's Day, and the mother refused the flowers and told her sister to take them home. No, 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 no. That's not the way you play the game. You need to receive those flowers, be thankful for them, and then if you didn't really want them, just let them go. But it is always the right energy is to receive something. Now, one of the best manifesting stories I've saved to the end, and that is that I managed to manifest a house. And this sounds totally cuckoo crazy, and it is sort of cuckoo crazy, but this really happened to me. So one day I wanted to rent a house and this was before the internet. So I was driving around with my girlfriend looking for rent signs in a little town in the East Bay. And it was hot. We were driving my ancient convertible, so we pulled over and I was putting the top up on the convertible. We were going to go somewhere and get a cold drink. And this little man comes toddling down the street. He was 80 years old. And he looked at us and he said, "What are you girls doing here?" And my girlfriend says, no, that's not what he said. He said, "What kind of a car are you guys driving?" And my girlfriend says, "It's a convertible," which was the most obvious thing to say in the world. And then he said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Oh, we're looking for a house to rent." And he says, "Oh, my house is for rent." And I'm like, "There's some 80-year-old guy walking down the street, like, your house is for rent." But I mean, it wasn't like he was picking up on us. It was just weird, you know? And he says, "Oh, yeah, it's just a couple of blocks away. My wife is home. She's watching the tennis game, and we're going to move away, and we need to find somebody to rent our house. And here's the address. Why don't you just go by, tell her I sent you?" And I was like, "Well, we're gonna get a cold drink and think about it." So we got our cold drinks, and then I was like, "Well, what's the harm? Like, it seems like a safe neighborhood, you know?" Well, okay, the wife was there. She was watching the tennis match. She let us in. I decided to rent the house. Later on, they decided to sell the house. My husband and I decided to buy it. I lived in it for 20 years. There's no explanation for why some little old man walking down the road would, you know, start talking to me and that the house would come together like this. And I bring this up because I think it's really important that, we all think about science and what makes sense and putting things together, but then we also sort of make some space in our lives for what are the things that don't make sense? What are the things that are just serendipity? What are the things that are being called into our lives by those invisible energies that we don't have a chance to see? And that's where I find manifesting really comes into being. So, again, as a reminder, my name is Michelle Walters. I am the author of a book called An Alignment of Spirit Finding Work You Love.